We need a wall to put a stop to it, and then we'll enforce our border policies. Policies on illegal immigration began to change, and governors and mayors in mainly Democrat areas, some are not, but mostly are, while they formed new policies to protect illegal immigrants from being deported. These became the so-called sanctuary cities. That's how it all began. And in a recent interview with News Nation, the former acting ICE director, the guy who would be in charge of deporting illegal immigrants under the Obama administration, John Sandwig, while he questioned whether these policies are going too far, these sanctuary city policies. And he raised the point that mayors, while they don't technically have the legal ability to block ICE from knocking on doors or the federal government from deporting illegal immigrants, but they do have some abilities, mostly only when it applies to preventing criminal aliens from being deported. The governors and mayors can, of course, block ICE's access to jails. They can make it more difficult for them to talk to law enforcement to deport an illegal immigrant who has committed a crime, which means they can only really protect criminals. And this raises some broader questions also about the real nature of these policies. Watch this.
The ones that were basically saying, look, if you're booked for driving without a license and we booked you because you didn't have a valid ID and we're trying to find out who you were, and the mayor says, I can't have you ICE taking them because it creates a chilling effect. Now victims are going to be scared to call when their immigrant spouse beats them up. Those are legitimate concerns. But I agree with you. Listen, some of these sanctuary policies went way too far, where you had convicted murderers where the locality would say, he's a convicted murderer, but we're not going to give you to ICE, even though he's a foreign national. Obviously, those undermine public safety.
Now, look, in terms of popularity, because we often view this as a very partisan issue, it does actually seem there's broad support for deportations on both sides of the aisle. This isn't just deportations of illegal immigrants who commit crimes. It's not just the criminal aliens. There's broad support, interestingly, of every illegal immigrant in the entire country. This is CNN, folks. CNN listed out some of these in a new poll, and it showed a CBS and YouGov report that had 62% of people saying they would support deportations of, quote, all undocumented immigrants currently living in the U.S. illegally. Now, other polls varied on that depending on the language, but some showed, mostly for the most part, did show pretty broad support for mass deportations. Not even just some deportations, but mass deportations, and notably on the left side of politics, meaning that this issue is not as divisive as it's been framed. And regardless of this, many mayors are actually standing by their positions. A lot of them say that, look, say what you will, we need to protect the people in our states, the people in our cities, even if they happen to be here illegally. Mayor of Frederick, Maryland, Michael O'Connor, he announced in a press conference last week a new fund that he's going to be using taxpayer dollars to pay the legal fees of illegal immigrants when they challenge deportations. Watch this.
The Frederick Police Department, in particular, is committed to ensuring all residents feel safe in reporting crime and know that they will not be questioned about their immigration status. We refuse to aid and abet outside agencies attempting to detain, deport, or remove any residents from our community. To reinforce this commitment, I will be asking the City Council to support a legal advocacy fund in the upcoming fiscal year's budget. This fund will provide resources to community partners for Frederick residents who may be harmed by policies from the new administration, ensuring they have the legal support they need to stand strong and remain in this community they have chosen to call home.
Now, some mayors are making even stronger statements than that. The mayor of Denver, Mike Johnston, spoke with Denverite about his policies and said that he would look into using the police to block federal forces from entering for mass deportations or even encourage Denver residents to do so. Now, Mayor Johnston later walked those statements back, but also made it clear that his overall position had not changed. He also said he would be willing to go to jail in standing against policies on mass migration. Watch.
Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan, has said that he is willing to arrest leaders like yourself for standing in the way of these policies that they want to enact. Would you be willing to go to jail for these things?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of that. And I'm also not seeking that. I think the goal is we want to be able to negotiate with reasonable people how to solve hard problems.
You would encourage people to protest?
I think we're going to look at every option.
Now, on that note, Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan, has said that he plans to move forward with mass deportations with or without support of local officials. And he has suggested local officials would be in violation of the law if they try to block these efforts. Now, I'll be going into Tom Homan's plans after we come back from a quick break, so stay tuned. With the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump just around the corner, we're now seeing a new type of border wall being built in the states. Now, look, mayors and governors are suggesting that they're going to strengthen sanctuary policies to protect illegal immigrants from being deported. However, Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan, has said that he plans to move forward with mass deportations with or without their support, and has also suggested local officials could be in violation of the law and could even be jailed if they try to block these efforts. He specifically called out Denver Mayor Mike Johnston over this on Fox News. Watch.
Me and the Denver mayor, we agree on one thing. He's willing to go to jail. I'm willing to put him in jail. Because there's a statute, it's Title 8 United States Code 1324 III. What it says is, it's a felony if you knowingly harbor and conceal illegal alien from immigration authorities. It's also a felony to impede a federal law enforcement officer. So if we don't help, that's fine. He can get the hell out of the way. But we're going to go do the job. President Trump has a mandate for American people. We got to secure this country. We got to save American lives.
Now, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, he also responded to this debate. In an interview with CBS News, he gave his take on where this could go. Watch this.
Now, I would say that the mayor of Denver, if he's going to resist federal law, which there's a long-standing history of the supremacy of federal law, if he's going to resist that, it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I would suspect that he would be removed from office. I don't know whether or not there'd be a criminal prosecution for someone resisting federal law, but he will lose. And people need to realize that what he is offering is a form of insurrection, where the states resist the federal government.
Now, look, let's be honest with ourselves. A lot of states have been resisting the federal government in recent years. This is not technically a new thing. We saw this under Trump's first term with the blue states, right? They were standing up against Trump's policies. They were blocking his policies at the local level. And then we saw this with Biden in the red states. Again, Florida, Texas, they were also trying to block a lot of Biden's policies and standing up against Biden at the local level. But when it comes to state rights in the federal, government's rights, right? I think we can technically say that there's a limit to that. Yes, states can challenge the federal government, but it's not absolute. And we've seen examples of this also. One example, Arizona was sued by the federal government to tear down its border barriers. In Arizona, they had tried building their own border barrier because they said the federal government was delinquent on the responsibility of securing the border. Texas tried the same thing. The Biden administration sued them, and they, in the end, had to tear down the border barriers. In other words, there was a legal battle over state rights, but when they lost that battle, they had to go with federal law because states cannot violate federal law. That's the technicality here. And that's also the suggestion when it comes to states saying they will prevent the federal government from deporting individuals because that is federal law, and states technically do not have the ability to block the federal government from doing that. That's the technical battleground here. Now, as Senator Rand Paul states, though, if we do see illegal challenges, it is very likely this could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. It probably will go there. And as the incoming border czar, well, if nothing else, if it turns out to be true, the local officials are violating federal law, then it could, in fact, lead to criminal charges against them. He is suggesting that he will enforce the law, including against local officials. And notably, the first wave of deportations they're talking about are not of just average people. The first wave of deportations, over 1 million of them, they're saying is going to be criminal aliens, illegal immigrants who have committed crimes in addition to illegally entering the country. And going by the law that Tom Homan has been citing, if you talk about normal crimes of harboring or preventing the federal government from carrying out deportations, you could face up to 7 years in jail. But if the individual you're protecting from being deported or harboring or concealing or whatever else is also a criminal, it's a mandatory 3-year enhanced sentence on top of that, meaning they could face up to 10 years in jail, but mandatory minimum 3 years. Now, Tom Homan is suggesting that he will even hold government officials to the full extent of that crime. We'll see if that actually happens, but this is where things are at right now. Now, look, another big part of the conversation on mass illegal immigration is crime. People talk about crime. If Donald Trump is going up and speaking about the problem of mass illegal immigration, what is he saying? Well, he's saying they're emptying out their prisons and they're emptying out their insane asylums. He says that they're sending their criminals here. He says the people are coming here, they're raping, they're murdering, they're joining gangs like Tren de Aragua. He's pointing to crime. And there are various allegations on how serious the problem of crime is with illegal immigrants. Other people would say, look, you criticize them of being criminals and so on. It's not as serious as you say. A lot of it comes down to the numbers. Now, we do know of gangs like Tren de Aragua. We know of MS-13. These are illegal immigrant gangs mostly. Tren de Aragua being Venezuelans, MS-13 being mostly people from El Salvador. But there is data suggesting that crime from illegal immigrants is actually more serious than what the data shows. And here's why. The Daily Signal had an investigation on this. It said a review of the available data shows that criminal records of millions of migrants, the ones President-elect Donald Trump vows to prioritize for deportation, remain unknown due to illegal crossings, lax enforcement, and lax data collected by federal and sanctuary jurisdictions. In other words, if the first wave of deportations under the Trump administration is going to be known criminals, how do you deport them if the crimes are not being documented and if you don't even know who they are? That is the big challenge with mass illegal immigration. If you go by the books, under Biden alone, you're looking at about 10, 11 million people who have illegally entered the United States. If you look at the books based on numbers prior to that, it's about 10 to 11 million people in this country, meaning we're looking at 20, 22 million illegal immigrants. The issue with mass illegal immigration is you don't actually know all of them. Some numbers say the number could be much, much higher than that, maybe even tens of millions higher. And if you talk about the people who are not known, the gotaways they would call them, or the ones who are not being traced, we don't really know the full extent of illegal immigrant crime. Now, back to Daily Signal. They say, in addition, an analysis of the available statistics by Real Clear Investigations suggests that the crime rate involving non-citizens is vastly understated. A separate RCI analysis based on estimates developed by the Justice Department's National Institute of Justice suggests that crime by illegal aliens who entered the U.S. by July 21st cost the country some $166.5 billion. They note the problem begins with incomplete initial vetting by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. The criminal histories of migrants from far-flung countries with often shoddy record-keeping are somewhat hard to determine, meaning they may screen some of them coming into the United States, but some of the countries that they're screening them from are not really developed countries in some instances. They're coming from every corner of the world, and some of these countries don't really have data on them. They also note it is also impractical to hold each person until he or she passes a rigorous background check, and as a result, ICE routinely releases many illegal immigrants into the country on their own recognizance, and then discovers afterwards that many had criminal records in their home countries. Meaning, ICE can only legally hold somebody for so long before they have to either release them into the heartland of the United States or send them back to Mexico to await things. The issue right now with the way the system works, when people illegally enter the United States coming in, let's say through Mexico, they have a vetting process if they go through the normal channels. This is not including people who sneak across. If they go through the normal channels, they surrender themselves, ICE, Immigration Enforcement, or Border Patrol. They then take them to processing facilities. Department of Homeland Security is involved with that. They do a brief background check. They can only legally hold them for up to 72 hours. Anything beyond that, they have to let them go. They cannot legally hold them beyond that. And so if the record checks process takes longer than that, and remember they're processing tons, millions of people, if the record process takes longer than 72 hours, they have to let them go into the United States. And what happens? Well, sometimes the data comes back later and says, oh, that's a criminal, that's a terrorist. And then what do they do then? Well, there's nothing they can do because the person is gone. Now, the other side of this is a lot of police departments, if they arrest an illegal immigrant, have no way of verifying the identity of the individual. And so unless it's a serious crime like murder, and they can hold the person indefinitely, they have no way to document the crime, they have no way to prosecute the crime, they have no way of holding the individual. The normal process set up in the way the country normally works is they hand those people off to ICE, ICE deports them. But because of sanctuary city policies, the governments, the mayors, the governors, they prevent that from happening. And because that process where ICE would be the law enforcement on that front, because that's gone, because of the way it's being handled, a lot of crime is not being prosecuted. And illegal immigrants are being let off without facing any criminal charges unless they decide to show up on a charge where they don't even have to verify their names. That's not happening, meaning we don't really know the full extent of crime from illegal immigrants. We don't know. And this is partly because of the barriers, again, that have been placed between law enforcement and ICE, as well as with other policies, the way the vetting is being done and such. But this will also very likely become a big part of the narrative battle that we're going to be soon watching unfold. Now look, in other news, folks, President-elect Donald Trump has announced tariffs. He's not even in yet, but he's announcing them. Tariffs on Mexico, tariffs on Canada, and tariffs on the Chinese Communist Party for their involvement in the drug trade and with other crimes as well. Now look, this is Donald Trump, what he's saying on Truth Social. He said, as everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before. Right now, a caravan coming from Mexico, composed of thousands of people, seems to be unstoppable in its quest to come through our currently open border. On January 20th, Inauguration Day, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. Now he adds, this tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. Both Mexico and Canada have the absolute right and power to easily solve this long simmering problem. And he said, we hereby demand they use this power, and until such time that they do, it is time for them to pay a very big price. Now, Trump actually went further than this, and he noted his plans also against the Chinese Communist Party, and he wrote a whole post just on that. Here's what he said. He said, I had many talks with China about the massive amounts of drugs, in particular fentanyl, being sent into the United States, but to no avail. Representatives of China told me that they would institute their maximum penalty, that of death, for any drug dealer caught doing this. But unfortunately, they never followed through. That's normal practice for the CCP, by the way. They'll sign an agreement. They will violate it before the ink dries. They will always do that. But Trump continues, they never followed through. And drugs are pouring into our country, mostly through Mexico, at levels never seen before. He says, until such time as they stop, we'll be charging China an additional 10% tariff above any additional tariffs. And he's talking about 60 to 100%